Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so happy you have joined us today, and I think you will be too after the show is over, because you will learn a lot about fresh fruits and vegetables, how to select and store them, how to prepare and cook them, and surprising facts about their history and origin. We hope it inspires you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, not only for your health, but also for your delight and pleasure as you explore their amazing world of taste and delicious flavors. Eating more of them will transform your life in so many positive ways. So settle back, relax, and get ready for another delicious adventure with the Produce Buzzers. Greetings and welcome to another delicious episode of the Produce Buzzers podcast. I'm Edwin Stepp, your host and executive editor of ProduceBuzz.com. I'm joined once again by Teresa Nolan, the founder and president of Produce Buzz, along with Rick Stepp, a contributing editor to Produce Buzz. Our lovely Cynthia Benedetto had some other things today that took priority, so she won't join us, but she'll be back on another show soon. This week's guest returns to the Produce Buzzers podcast for his second time. He is a man who pioneered podcasting about fruits and veggies before there was anything called podcasting. He was probably the first person to have a radio show that focused on fresh produce. Long before we had the term podcasting, our guest was on the radio airwaves across the country with a show called The Produce Pair. Now, the pair, you might think is spelled P-E-A-R, but it's actually P-A-I-R, because he had a colleague who he teamed up with, and they were the Produce Pair. And they talked about all things fruit and veggie, which we love. Our guest today is Dan Avakian, a.k.a. Dan the Produce Man. And he has 50 years experience working in the produce business. He has a deep passion for all things about fresh produce and brings that energy along with his deep, rich, velvety voice when he talks about fresh fruits and vegetables. You see, Dan moonlighted as a rock jock in the San Francisco Bay Area while he worked days in various positions in the produce business. So he has a lot of experience in producing interesting and informative entertainment in compelling ways. Dan is also featured regularly on one of the most popular podcasts about fruits and veggies, the Produce Industry Podcast. He is featured in a specially themed version of the show called Fresh from the Field Fridays, in which he zeroes in on a particular fruit or veggie to give the audience everything they need to know about it. So since we share the same passion for fresh produce, we love his passion for fruits and veggies, and we are delighted to have Dan on the show today. Dan, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Edwin, Teresa, and Rick. It's great to be here.
Yes, we are so excited. We had an episode at the end of last year in which we all gave our votes, and some we didn't really vote, but we gave our opinions on which were the best podcasts of 2023, and your name was right at the top of the list. So
really?
We all agreed that was one of our finest because of all of your knowledge.
Wow. Well,
so
certainly appreciate that.
Yeah. And I know today is going to be another great one. So thanks for joining us. First of all, remind our listeners about your background. I teased it a bit, but how did you get started in the produce industry, and maybe a little bit about the radio career as well?
Well, I don't know, Edwin. Going back quite a few years. I was a paper boy delivering newspapers. Yes, folks, boys and girls used to deliver newspapers to people's homes. What do you think of that, folks out
First
there?
of all, what's a newspaper, Dan?
Right.
Is that some, I don't understand that.
Once it was printed, it was done, man. It was on its way. And so I did that for 5 years, from age 10 to 15. And at 15, I was like, I'm 15. I can't be a paper boy anymore. That's for young guys. I have to have a job. So
how early did you start? How early in the morning did you have to start?
Well, on the weekends, it was 4 a.m. But during the week, it was an after-school paper. It was a 3 o'clock in the afternoon paper. So I was able to go right after school, deliver my papers, and go home and do homework and all that other stuff. But on the weekends, it was a 4 a.m. Saturday and Sunday paper. So I was already used to getting up early.
Prepping you for the produce business. That's actually late in the day for produce, but
well, that's true. But imagine a 10, 12, 11-year-old kid out there at 4 o'clock in the morning today delivering newspapers. I don't think so. But we could back then, and it was a lot of fun. But hey, had to work. Friend of mine across the street, he was an older man, but we used to buy and sell and trade comic books. Between my brother and I, we had like 2,000 comic books, Fantastic Four, 1 through 16, and the original Captain Marvel, where the kid said Shazam and turned into that, and Superman, all these comic books, thousands of them. And so we would buy, trade, and sell with this guy across the street. And I said, hey, I got to get a real job. And he says, oh, my brother-in-law's opened up a produce market right up around the corner. Why don't you go see him? Walked up there, met him. Guy said, okay, get to work. Threw me on a trailer full of watermelons stacked from the floor to ceiling with layers of straw in between, and we unloaded those by hand all day.
Yeah. Rick and I have done a bit of that too. I remember the straw they used to put between them when they didn't put them in bins in those days. They just stack them in the truck.
That's right. Yes. And some of them had blown up in the middle, so you pick it up and it would just poop all over you. And it was, others, these were big watermelons too. These weren't. Actually, I've noticed that the seeded watermelon more and more has become more and more in demand. And while the stores switched over to seedless watermelons for many years, the demand and popularity of the seeded watermelon has come back, and a lot of the major chains are handling them again. It's not just specialty stores. So
yeah.
That's because they're sweeter.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. As a kid working in the produce market and in the produce departments, I learned how to cut a watermelon in half where the seeds wouldn't show, or sometimes 1 or 2 would show, and that would be about it. And then those would make, great quarters and halves because they were just so beautiful. But there was a method to doing it, and I got it down pat.
Yeah.
But then seedless watermelons comes along, and there you go.
Yeah.
There's several varieties. I remember, I'm in California in the San Francisco Bay Area, and this is where I grew up in fresh produce. But I remember we would get solid green varieties. Peacock, I believe, was the variety name at the time. And then later on, we would get what we call the rattlesnake varieties, which were very light in color, but the green stripes on them, the squiggly green stripes, were dark. And those came to us out of Texas at the time. I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
And so varieties are all over the place, I guess.
Right.
So does California have several watermelon seasons? Does it start in the south in the desert area and then move north? Or
yeah, starts in the desert mid-June, starts in the desert way down Imperial Valley Desert, and then it just moves its way up to San Joaquin, Stanislaus. Heck, I used to get them when I had my produce market. I used to get them from a guy who grew them up northern California, Calusa, way up where the Italian prunes and Bartlett pears and Empress plums. So that's way up north, Cortland and that area. And he would bring the watermelons to me in his truck. And they were big, long watermelons. In fact, I did a video, it's about 10 years old. It's on my YouTube called Dan the Produce Man. And that video is, for some reason, has millions of views. I don't know why, but he's got these big, giant watermelons, and some of them are orange, some of them are yellow, some of them are red. What the varieties are, I don't know. He didn't even know. He just grew them and brought them down to me.
Wow, that's pretty far north, isn't it?
Yeah, that is.
Melons.
So
they need. I think I remember my dad grew a few watermelons in his time. It wasn't a major crop for him, but I just remember him saying it takes 100 days to make a watermelon.
Okay. Well,
so if you get too far north, you're not going to get 100 days worth of weather to make them. So that's pretty interesting.
Well, it gets hot, pretty hot up in that area.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
California, pretty
Right.
hot.
That's true. That's right. It's almost desert up there too, isn't it?
Yeah, some areas, yes.
Right. So you're working as a 15-year-old at this produce market and you get the bug, or were you condemned to
Oh no,
be?
I loved it. I loved it. I loved unloading those watermelons with those smelly Teamster guys that he hired to were drinking all day long while we were unloading them and dropping them, and they. But I enjoyed it, and then of course working in the store, delivering to restaurants, bringing people would call up on the phone, and I'd bring them their orders to their houses.
Wow.
I loved it. I fell in love with it, and at the time, all the corn in the stores was yellow, and white corn was just kind of a specialty item. And I'll never forget, I go to the store to go to work in the morning. There's a line of cars outside waiting for us to open up. I get inside. There's people in line standing out front. I'm looking through the glass doors that go out to the outside. They were big roll-up doors because it was an old gas station that was converted. And I'm smelling the melons and the stone fruit, and I see the excitement of the people for this produce. We open the doors, and people come in and go, "My God, white corn! I haven't seen that in years. This is great. It's a specialty. Oh, wonderful!" Getting excited about the apricots and all the different things, and I loved it. It hit me. I don't know. It just was fascinating and exciting, so I just stayed in it.
Yep. Exciting is a good word, I think, for the produce business.
Well, it's never boring. That's the thing. It's never
Right.
boring. And to this day, I still learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Every single day. And so, how can you go wrong with that?
Right.
You know,
It's so
uh,
delicious. It's good for you. There's no product like it. And, they're not widgets either. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature. So it's the marketing of them and the distribution of them is a trick. It takes a lot of
yes.
know-how and finesse to know how to get that fruit grown into the market. So,
Well, I remember customers coming into my store, and my displays were loaded up. They were full. They were beautiful. It was always fresh because I'm just very anal retentive. Plus, my name was on the building. So, you know, and people coming in saying, "My goodness, look at all of this perishable product. How do you manage this? Aren't you afraid of loss and this and that?" And I said, "Well,
well,
this is all I've been doing all my life. So I know it and I know it well. So I know how to move this stuff. It's just natural when you grow up in it. You guys know this. It's natural."
yeah, farmers are big risk takers and people in the produce industry are big risk takers, but they love it. I don't think it's an addiction, but it does get in your blood. And it looks like it got in your blood as a 15-year-old. And now we have to talk about this jump. You're unloading watermelons for somebody else, but eventually you have your own store. How did that come about?
Oh boy. Well, I moved all over the produce industry because I wanted to learn every facet of it. So I got into the supermarket chains, then club stores, food service distribution, wholesalers, home delivery, all these different ends of the produce. And people would say, "Well, why are you jumping around so much?" I said, "Well, one, it's produce. A lot of people just go on LinkedIn. People are always changing around. But I wanted to learn every facet of it, even refrigeration, because I knew I was going to have my own business one day."
Well,
And so that very same store, fast forward to 2006, is up for sale. The original owner's son didn't want it anymore. I bought it and just turned it around, cleaned it all up, upgraded it, brought in more up to date produce selection. We had organic and natural groceries. We had a seafood monger come in who was highly reputable, breads and cheeses, but we had all that selection, but it was produce focused. And I did a lot of running around. I wanted corn picked the same day, and I went and I got it at the farm, and I brought it back, and my sign was on there, "Picked this morning." You know,
wow, that's tough to do.
the all the pluots and peaches and things you see behind me, that's in the back of my pickup truck. So I would go and get all these things. Plus, I would shop all three San Francisco Bay Area produce markets. So I would shop those three, buy from farms, go to farms, have farmers bring me things. People were coming in and saying, "Hey, what's local?" They're coming in January saying, "I'm on a 100-mile diet," and I said, "Well, good. Citrus and greens is your diet then for this time of the year. What's local? This and that." So what I did was, because I dealt with so many small local independent growers, I created the Farm Direct box, which gave folks a selection, a CSA box, but a selection broader than if you were to buy it from one farm, because there are several farms in one box, which means you're not going to get 6 weeks of butternut squash and 6 weeks of kale. And it could always change around because there were different growers in the box. So that went over really well, and I enjoyed it. There was just one problem, and that was the building was falling apart, and I was tired of putting money into it. I was supposed to be able to buy the property, but that backfired. That whole thing blew up. So I said, well, okay, I'm done. A friend of mine wanted it. And he said, Dan, I got a lot of people in my family who do carpentry and cement work and this and that and this and that. I don't mind patching the place up and coming in. And I said, okay. We turned it into a place for gourmands and chefs and families, and we had Fruits of the Earth celebrations and kids clubs that were real kids clubs. School field trips were coming in. I would go to the schools and they'd put 2 or 3 classes together and talk to the kids. And I don't know, it was a blast. It was the whole thing really good.
That is fantastic. I remember you talking about it last time, but it didn't hit me as much as today. What impact you were having on the local community in a bigger, broader way than just giving them good, fresh fruits and vegetables. That's hats off to you for that. Earlier on, you said you were concerned about the quality of the fruit on your displays because the building had your name on it. So what was the name of this store?
Oh, it was called Dan's Fresh Produce.
Okay.
That was it. The guy that has it now renamed it to Dan's Farmers Market.
Oh, so your name is still on it.
Yeah, my name's still on it, but it's not me. Everybody runs it differently,
Yeah.
Right.
You should franchise it. You should franchise Dan's Fresh Produce, Dan's Farmers Market.
I was approached by the other side of town, the other side of the island that I live on, of their business association, to put one over there. I was approached by 2 food megaplexes that were being built that never really got off the ground because the money just wasn't there. But there was a huge one at the Oakland Ferry Terminal that they wanted to mimic the San Francisco Ferry Terminal. So the San Francisco Ferry Terminal, where people would take the ferry boat from the East Bay into San Francisco or into Marin County. In San Francisco, they built a huge food retail place for food inside the ferry terminal.
Oh, cool.
And twice a week, they have a huge farmer's market. Saturday, it's massive. But inside there, you have bakeries, you have Far West Fungi, the mushroom folks, you have meats and different gourmet foods. It's a gourmet alley. So at the time, these folks wanted to put one in Oakland, and the building's there. They built it. But it's just sitting there. They wanted me to go in there. There was another one where they're taking old Del Monte cannery and they wanted a market to go in there. So I was approached to franchise it, but I'm glad I never did.
Yeah. That
seems like a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah, and running a produce market isn't, Dan? Come on, we did it.
Running one, but I mean, I could have done it, and that's great.
No, the headaches that come with that kind of stuff, that's not for me either, so I could understand that. Well, we mentioned your Fresh from the Field Fridays podcast. Do you want to tell our listeners about that, how they can find it, and then tell us more about it?
Fresh from the Field Fridays came about. I was twiddling my thumbs during this lockdown thing that they had here in California, and I'm sure it was other parts of the country, but nothing to do. So I contacted Guido the gardener, who was my old partner on the radio with the Produce Pair radio show.
Okay.
And I said, hey, What are you doing? He goes, nothing. I said, okay, buddy, let's bring back the Produce Pair as a podcast. He said, all right. So we did. And we were doing it. But then Guido got this job that required him to just spur of the moment go somewhere. So it's got hard to pin him down, hard to pin down the guest at the same time. You set up a guest, but now the co-host can't be there. You do it solo with a guest, that's fine. And it just got a little crazy. Plus, he wanted to retire and move out of state anyway, which he did do. So I was talking with Patrick Kelly because he approached me and said, hey, can you come on the podcast? And I said, sure. And we were talking afterwards. And I told him, well, I'm going to end the Produce Pair thing. And he says, oh, great, good. I go, what do you mean? He goes, I need a Friday podcast. Why don't you come join me? And I want a second podcast. I've already named it. It's called Fresh from the Field Fridays. Come on and tell people what's going on in the fields. You get all the reports from this and that. And I said, okay, if this is for the produce industry and everybody gets those reports to their emails, why in the world would you want me to read it to them? They already know this information. Let's make it a little more exciting. So he said, all right, you've just got total freedom. Just do it. It's off and on. I have guests. I like the produce. Okay. I want to talk about the produce, inform people about the produce, and interview people about the produce. I like to have my hands in it. That's what I've always done. That's why I bought a store, so I could continue to work with it in my hands. So that's where that is right now. And I'm bringing on a co-host. A lot of folks like to record way ahead of time. I like to be in the moment because that's where the produce changes. Items change. Something might come up this week that you want to get out there. So
things change because it's so seasonal. So that's good. And I've appreciated your Fresh from the Field Fridays, but also the social media you do on the other social platforms. You always have some really interesting videos, and it seems like it's, this is happening right now. So that's good.
Yeah, I like to keep it in the moment.
Right. So. And is that Fresh from the Field Fridays more geared to consumers, or is it to the industry?
So some of the folks that are consumers are also listening. And we had it the other way around on the radio show too. We were on 500 stations across country, and it was geared towards consumers, but we had a lot of folks in the industry listening as well. So
yeah, that makes sense. I know what I've seen. Consumers will be very enlightened to see your content. But,
well, without the consumers, we don't have the folks in the industry. So,
yeah, how does that work? Huh?
Right, exactly. Kind of like I had an employee one time say, man, I just set that up and that lady's going to come in and wreck that whole display. I said, hey, that lady is on your paycheck, buddy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that, thinking that too when we had our produce. Oh, I just finished it. Now it's destroyed. But there's money in the cash register.
That's right.
Well, I know that you are a great evaluator of produce departments in the various produce or the grocery chains around the country. And I think you can give a lot of insight to our listeners about how to navigate the produce department, what to look for. I know that's a very general question. I probably should have something more specific, but what are some things that you would highlight for consumers walking into that produce section, which is usually the first place they go in? Most of the stores I know, that's the first department you enter into.
Yes, while that looks good, it's not really good. It should be the last, and I'll tell you why. When you're in the produce department and you go into the store, go get your other stuff first.
Good point.
And because especially if you're buying fresh cut or if you're buying berries, and you're going to spend 20 or 30 minutes in there with those items out of refrigeration. You've broken the cold chain. So buy those things last, because then they will have been under refrigeration the longest and not sitting at room temperature as you cruise through the store. Yeah. That's one of my suggestions. And then also,
let me just make one comment about that too. The other thing about that is if you're buying soft fruits and veggies, and they're on the bottom of the cart.
Oh yeah,
You pile your canned goods on top. That has occurred to me.
You can skip the jelly aisle because that's what you'll have.
That's funny.
Well, also it's just on your way home as well. If you're going to go to the store and you're going to buy produce, especially fresh cuts or berries, things that are highly, highly, highly perishable, which most of it is. And then you're going to stop off and you're going to go to the bank, and then you're going to go do this. And if you're a parent, you're going to go pick up your kids from somewhere, and you're going to go, get a haircut or whatever it is. Well, that stuff's sitting out of refrigeration. You can't, if it doesn't last, you can't say, oh, well, I'm never shopping at that store again. That stuff it's garbage.
Right.
So, because you've killed the refrigeration on it, which it needs. See, what our consumers don't understand is when it's harvested and pre-cooled, then it's packed and it's kept cold, and then the trucks have to have their trailers to a certain temperature, usually 35, 38 degrees, before they can even back into a refrigerated dock. The produce comes out of that refrigerated cooler, whatever they are, onto a refrigerated dock into those refrigerated trucks. They get to the location to where they're dropping them off, whether it's a distribution center, a jobber, the produce market, whatever it is, or direct to the store. Okay. And then that has to go into the cooler, because that's called the cold chain, which everyone here knows, but the consumer doesn't know that. That's called the cold chain. And then it goes up onto a refrigerated rack into your store. So it's always kept refrigerated. So when you break that, then that's when breakdown starts to occur. So buy it, get it home, get it under refrigeration if it's a refrigerated item, and then go do your other things. Yeah. So that's one of my suggestions to consumers.
Great tip. Great tip. Yeah.
Another thing I would like to add to that is I almost always take an ice chest with me in the back of the car, and then pack usually if anything's frozen, I put it in the bottom and then put the produce on top of it just to keep it cooler on the hot summer days. Wintertime, I don't necessarily have to do that.
Yeah, in Duluth in wintertime. You probably have to bring a heater then.
That's a darn good tip, though, Rick. Very good tip. That's a darn good tip, because absolutely, especially if you're going to the farmer's market too, because nothing there is under refrigeration.
Right.
So bring that ice chest. That's great.
Yeah, you can bring some of those frozen ice packs if you want.
Absolutely. Put
those on top and keep it cold. Yeah.
Yep. That's too much work for me, but that's a good tip anyway. No, but that cold chain, I'm glad you brought that up. That's very interesting. I knew about the cold chain, but I hadn't thought about it after the consumer picks it up. Yeah, they need to keep it in there too. Like you said, that cold chain, they've gotten it down to such a science. You're talking about the truck's back. The truck has to get down to a certain temperature, and then it backs into that dock, and those docks seal up. They have the seals around the edges. So it's sealed almost completely from the time it gets in those refrigerators all the way to the racks. And those trucks have monitors on them. So if that temperature goes up too high at any point in transit, they can trace it back.
That's all real-time monitors too. These things are all digital now. In the old days, we had a carbon paper roll with a graph on it that would tell you, that when it was went down, if they shut the reefer off or whatever, then you would take that and you would throw it in a mailbox and it would go back to them. But everything is real time now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And driver can't pull over to the side of the road or shut off the reefer to save gas. They have to keep that thing nice and cold.
Yeah. We've not talked about that before on the show, I don't think. So that's some really good new content. Thanks, Dan, for that. Well, anything else you want to say about the produce departments, or is that your main tip for us today?
Well, look around at your produce department. Go, if you're not satisfied with your grocery store, produce department will tell you something. Look around, make sure the floor is clean, that there are folks in the department working, that there's not a bunch of lettuce leaves on the rugs that go in front of the wet racks, that the misting system is in working, that the displays, the banana displays aren't full of old banana blossom brown ends or avocado buttons in the avocado part or old onion skins all over the place. This shows you that that there's not a lot of care in it. You want to shop where the folks are knowledgeable, the place is kept clean, the folks are hygienically clean, the scales are clean, the floor, the rugs, everything is clean and everything is fresh on the stand. If you wouldn't take it home to your mother or take it over to your grandmother's house, then, don't buy it yourself.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of places, I've been in places like that, but there's a lot of beautiful places. I partial to independent grocers. I just think their system allows them to do a way better job.
I know you and I have talked about this personally. I think we might have talked about it the last time you were on the show, but produce directors out there, I know some of you are listening, and supermarket CEOs and top executives. That produce department should be a place you invest heavily. Because
Absolutely.
when people walk in there, if they see what Dan was talking about, dirty and things on the floor, they're going to judge you in every other department, and you're going to lose business. And it's a place where you should be investing heavily. And I'll just put a plug in for Dan. Dan is the man who could help you get that solved. So reach out to him.
Absolutely.
Reach out to him and call him, because he's ready and willing to come help train your people. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Well, no, thank you. I appreciate that. Absolutely. Yeah. You're absolutely correct.
I do think the produce department, we're in the produce business, so we are very judgmental about the produce department, but consumers, I think, even if they aren't in the produce business, don't know it. Subconsciously, when they walk into a bad produce department, they're making a judgment on that store. So.
Yep, it's what they don't see as well as what they see. You can have the cheapest prices in the world and not have any customers, just on how you handle things.
Yeah, very true. So let's play a bit of Mythbusters. That show where they have these urban myths or urban legends or scientific information. They try to prove whether they're true or not. And I know there's a lot of myths out there about fresh produce that you've seen. I've seen a few. What are some that come to mind for you that are most annoying?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if you want me to get into this or not, but
yeah, I do.
There's a lot of articles out there on the internet. There's some really good ones, and then there's others where folks are just repeating what they pulled from another website. One of the myths that blows my mind is I've seen some posts on social media, and I've seen an article on it too. How to tell if your watermelon's been injected with color. Okay. Now, Teresa, Rick, and Edwin, tell me, what watermelon grower has the time, the money, and the energy to go out into the field or into the packing shed and inject every watermelon or every watermelon vine with color? Okay. Who in the world has the money to spend on something so, I'm just going to say flat out stupid? Okay, ridiculous. I'll just be kinder and say ridiculous. But there was an article, and I saved it. The headline was, "How to Tell If Your Watermelon Has Been Injected with Color." So I'm reading the article, and they're going on saying, well, watermelons, this, that, they grow like this, and, this variety, that variety. When cutting a watermelon, store it like this, and, all good stuff. And then you get down to the bottom, and how to tell if your watermelon has been injected with color. Well, it's obviously clickbait, but there's a little paragraph. Well, if there's color going into the rind, then it's been injected. Just make sure that all these other things points that we gave you are in sync, and you'll have a fine watermelon. So, but you have folks that look at those headlines, right? They don't go any further.
Right.
The attention spans are done these days. So all of a sudden, all these comments are there. Oh my gosh, now they're injecting with color. Oh my gosh, they're in collusion with the spaceships, and we're gonna, I mean, just, right? So, it's putting wrong information out there and suggestive information, which we see on the news all the time with other issues. So, but how many folks are going to be deterred from buying a watermelon? How many folks are going to go to a dinner at somebody's house and say, "Did you know that they inject watermelons with color and this and that?" Watermelons have their own color. And then there was a video of that as well. A guy said, "Oh, this is how you tell," and he cut it open and he stuck it on a paper towel and he pulled the paper towel away and there was some red color on the paper towel. Now, could be from the watermelon, but I heard that in India that some of the merchants do that. Well, okay, fine. Again, if you got that kind of time, good for you. I mean,
Right.
you want to spend it doing something. So that's one myth that annoys the heck out of me.
Yeah, I'd seen that one. It's just seemed so ridiculous. But like you said, it's clickbait for a
Yeah.
lot of these
Oh,
people.
yeah.
But then
Absolutely.
it's clickbait, but then it becomes everybody's talking about it because it's so bizarre sounding and it spreads.
But if the watermelon is whole, it's not like you're going to be cutting the watermelon open in the store to see if there's been an injection anyway. So
Oh,
it's
yes.
so ridiculous that it wouldn't even be worth their time.
Well, what will an injection do to a watermelon? Just think about an injection hole in a watermelon.
Mm-hmm.
What does a puncture in a watermelon do to it? I said, yeah. And if you got, pallets and pallets of those on a truck or bins of them on a truck, and they all have a hole in them because they've been colored, oh boy, you're asking for trouble.
A lot of watermelon juice all over the place.
They'd be blowing up like the ones you were talking about blowing up on that truck you were unloading at 15 years old. Yeah. Well, that's
Another
good.
one is everything is genetically modified. It's genetically engineered. They're out to make us eat frankenweed and everything else. Well, that's not true. However, think about it. Again, there's stone fruit behind me. There's crates of it. That stone fruits originally weren't big and luscious like this. They were smaller. Peaches were flatter, um, and things have been developed over the years through genetics to give us the fruit that we have today. And yes, folks, even organic fruits and vegetables as well. So there's not this big conspiracy to force us all to eat genetically modified fruits and vegetables. Sometimes it just gets ridiculous. So
Yeah.
those are some of the things.
Yeah. You're doing yourself, if you want to believe it, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're missing out on some really good quality fruits and vegetables. And that, the hybridization and the years of creating new varieties through breeding, that's brought us much healthier and much more flavorful fruits and veggies.
It's what the public wants to believe. Anybody remember Frank Zappa here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oops.
The slime oozing out from your TV set, the lyrics to that particular song, which was written in the either late 60s or at least it was recorded in the very early 70s, says a whole lot to what folks are paying attention to. And it's even worse today with the phones and the tablets and the watches and everything else because people are glued to that. But if you listen to those lyrics, and in fact, there's a great video of that on YouTube with Frank Zappa. I guess it was Saturday Night Live, and Don Pardo is in there with him, and he's reading off some of the lyrics as well. And it all has to do with people being addicted to their screens.
Oh, I got to look for that.
Yeah.
I don't remember that song. I knew a lot of his songs. I'll have to remind myself of that one. But that is so true. So much slime oozing out of media these days, misinformation. So listeners, make sure you check that clickbait, read further, do a little bit more digging to know what is true and not true about your fresh fruits and veggies. Well, Dan, what other tips do you have for our listeners before we sign off?
Well, just real quick, this is the time of the year to go to your local produce shops, your local farmers markets, and buy the best of what is in season, freshly picked, nice and ripe, just tasty. It's a big difference from what you'll get in the supermarkets. Though what you get in the supermarkets right now is good because it's the heart of the season. However, you will find little niche items here and there at these farmers markets and produce stands. So enjoy that while they're here, because the rest of the year they won't be.
So yes, that's a great place to go. You'll get, like you said, the varieties, the heirloom varieties are fantastic in most of these markets.
Man, just don't expect them to hold up for a week like
Right.
like the ones from the supermarket.
Right.
Buy them, enjoy them, consume them, and be happy and anticipate it for next year.
That's great. That's the great way to end, except we're not going to end yet, Dan.
No, okay.
There's a ritual that all our guests have to go through when they come on the Produce Buzzers podcast. And I'm sorry to say to you,
right?
Yeah, it's up to you. I will say this: it is painful. It's a painful ritual.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the store deal. Teresa loves her puns, and every episode she brings a pun in a segment that we call Home Grown. Get it? So she's going to tell us, she's going to tell us her pun. It's usually in the form of a question. And we try to guess the punny answer before she tells it to us. So she'll tell it, and then we'll try to guess. And then if we don't get it, she'll let us know. So, okay, Teresa, what is the homegrown of the day?
Well, I heard that Dan, the produce man, was going to have a contest, and he was going to judge the most beautiful fruits and vegetables. But there was one vegetable that did not want to enter the contest. What was it and why?
Okay.
What vegetable did not want to enter the contest?
Yes.
Man, oh
what
man.
And why?
What? Why?
Okay. Here's a
Boy,
contest.
That's a good one.
The best. You didn't say the most beautiful. You just said the best.
Mm-hmm.
Rick's usually pretty good at guessing these, or at least coming up with something punny. Rick, you got any ideas?
Well, the first thing I thought of was ugly fruit, but I can't.
Yeah, very good.
That's
very good.
Good guess,
But
Rick.
why? Because he's ugly.
Why? Because he's ugly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Boy,
okay, Dan, you got any ideas? This is your contest. You should know already.
I know. Sheesh, I tell you. I don't have a produce list in front of me, so I don't know. I can't go down A to Z, so I'm just trying to think. Yeah. Oh, ugly fruit's a fruit, though. You said vegetable.
Yeah, that's right. You said vegetable, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Oh, she did say vegetable.
Mm-hmm. That's all right, but I liked your answer, Rick.
Would not enter the contest. It refused to enter the contest. A vegetable that refused to enter a beauty contest?
Mm.
Is it beauty? It's beauty or just
Well,
best? Okay, could be. All right, you've given a little clue there, I think.
Yeah, either one. That's fine.
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Well, it was the carrot, because he could not carrot all.
Oh my goodness.
Dan, you're not supposed to laugh. You're supposed to groan. Come on. This is homegrown, not home laugh.
Oh, man. Oh, that's
Okay.
good.
I warned you. I didn't want to tell you ahead of time, Dan, because I knew you probably would have backed out of the show, but I'm sorry to put you through that.
That's okay. You know, it's
you're a good
funny
sport.
because you hear the puns all through your career. You hear the puns from customers, from other people. It's just a lot of things, same thing over and over and over. And it's like, okay, you know, but this is one I've never heard, Teresa. So
Oh, thank you. Thank
can't
you.
go wrong with that.
I've seen Dan do a few puns in his social media posts too. I've
Yeah,
seen
and those
that.
just come, they just hit me at the time. I don't do scripted things very well. So.
Oh, you have a sick mind, Dan. I thought
Very much.
I'm,
That's a compliment.
but you didn't take your clothes off. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank me for that. Yes, absolutely.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Dan, for taking the time. I hope that we'll have you back soon, and maybe we'll see you sometime soon here in the future as well. So thanks a lot.
Rick, Teresa,
you.
Edwin, thank you very much. It's been an honor to spend this time with you. Sure do appreciate it.
Same here.
Great.
We enjoyed it. Thanks, Dan.
Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast, brought to you by Produce Buzz, the gathering place for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. We hope you were entertained a bit and educated a lot about fresh produce. Be sure to join us next time, and please tell your friends to do so as well. Like, share, and comment on our Produce Buzz Facebook page, and check out our website at www.producebuzz.com. There you will find articles about fresh fruits and veggies, how to select, store, and prepare them, as well as lots of interesting facts about all the wonderful bounty the earth provides for us. Until next time, be fruitful and don't forget to veg out.